Good evening, everybody. Happy Thursday. Different day for David Wagner's press conference yet again, different time. So, we're sort of getting used to it now. But yeah, Adam Harvey joined by Connor Southwell for your preview show. We're looking ahead to a very big game for the Canaries on Saturday away at Millwall, a big game in terms of where they probably are in terms of their playoff credentials and the push for that as well. Connor, just to start off the show, though, want to kind of get your thoughts and reflections on the Cardiff game. It's been almost a week now on. Obviously, we saw Marquinhos make his debut in that game, got a goal and an assist. So what did you make of that one, and how big a statement was that for Norwich in terms of then going into this game?
Yeah, important in terms of the Carrow Road form, important in terms of winning more generally, I think, and maintaining that run. Obviously, the transformation in terms of most of the trends has been pretty impressive, but actually arguably few are as important as that Carrow Road one, and ending that, and the fact they've been able to do that with 3 successive wins after what was a difficult day against Burnley, I think is a really good sign of their progress. And the fact they were so comfortable and commanding for not all of it, but certainly for the vast majority of it, I think is really encouraging against a Cardiff side who obviously are at the wrong end of the table and really struggle for goals, but actually their defensive record has been pretty good this season. So their ability to score 2, to keep a clean sheet, I think is always helpful and always a good result at this stage. It keeps their momentum going, and actually to bring it kind of full circle into this game, for them to bounce into that game on the back of the run that they're in at the moment, 3 wins from 4. Obviously, the other one was the 0-0 draw against Wigan. 16 points from David Wagner's first 8 games. Only Middlesbrough and Burnley have taken more. All of these statistics are what they need to achieve now if they're going to finish this season in the top 6. And maybe the bit that I'm looking at and going, well, actually, the first proper test will come when they play teams in and around them, because that has been a major problem this season, as you know, I put to David Wagner today, and as we've kind of looked into over the last few days. So if they can kind of bounce into this game, win at Millwall, become the first team since QPR in September to do that in the Championship, that would be unbelievable. To then obviously follow it up with a positive result against Sunderland as well, I think it would probably turn what I would say is hope at this moment in time that Norwich City can finish in the playoffs and still get promoted to the Premier League into real tangible belief. And that now has to be the aim. So in terms of setting up this fixture for it to be kind of in the magnitude that we're talking about tonight, that Cardiff win was absolutely pivotal in terms of that framing and in terms of forging that narrative, I think.
Yeah, you just kind of touched on it there. The next 2 games do feel pretty defining on where Norwich City are going to be, whether it's going to be a potential playoff push going into the final 10 games, or whether it will be more of a sort of mid-table looking downwards. I just want to get a graphic up which I just made for you actually, just sort of which outlines the situation in terms of Norwich versus the top 10 so far this season. Obviously, they're the bottom of that list, just 2 wins. Strangely enough, those wins actually came against Millwall and Sunderland. So with that, Connor, how important is it that they turn around that and they get the win at Millwall? That'd be a bit of a statement, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's massive. I'd probably say it's one of those where you could categorize it more as just don't lose it. If you draw it and you come away with a point, I think you can frame that positively in terms of they've not dropped points, they've not lost ground on Millwall and those teams in the top 6. Obviously, a win is preferable. If they could do that, I think we're in the territory of it being a real statement. And Chris Sutton wrote in his column this week that is probably the only thing that's been missing so far from David Wagner's kind of tenure, I suppose, that opening 8 games, because they've played teams on average. I think the league position is about 15th. So that kind of shows that actually they've come largely, with the exception of Burnley, against sides that I think most people would be looking at and saying, well, if you've got playoff aspirations, you have to win these games. So the fact that they're now going to be tested against teams who are in the top 10, who, as we saw from that graphic you put up there, they haven't had a good record against this season whatsoever. I think we're going to learn a lot more about Norwich City and where they're at, because if they get sort of roundly beaten and played off the park in these next 2 games, we can probably look at it and once again say, yep, this group is probably about where we thought they were, and they're probably a little bit short for the playoffs. If we flip that, if they get 4 points, if they get 6 points, I think we're looking at it and framing it completely differently and saying, actually, yep, do you know what? It's on. The transformation that this group has been through under David Wagner has been really successful. It will be 10 games then. It's not a massive body of evidence, but it's enough of a body of evidence, I think, to maybe assess where a team is going to be. So for me, this is now the last remaining challenge, and it's why I've been quite reserved about what we've seen so far, because it's actually, if they can do it against Millwall and they can do it against Sunderland and they can do it against West Brom and Middlesbrough when they face those later on in the season, Sheffield United have to come to Carrow Road as well, then I think that's when we're really going to see what this Norwich City group are made of, and whether or not this improvement is something that can be turned into kind of playoff form and playoff winning form ultimately, which is the aim. Because for all of the talk and all of the excitement that they've created so far, they haven't been able to beat a team in that top 10. Obviously, since Wagner arrived, they've only played Burnley, so it would be pretty tough. And that in itself is not an easy fixture. They're sat right at that top of the list, as they are in every list in terms of the Championship. So yeah, I think it's a real excitement, actually, is probably the word I'd use ahead of this weekend, but also real intrigue about how Norwich City will fare. And I think I remember, I don't know if we did this before Burnley. I feel like we did do one of these before Burnley and I was on it, but maybe it was another platform. But we spoke about it being a proper test and a proper kind of gauge as to where Norwich City were. And in the end, obviously, Tim Krul makes the error after 8 minutes and the game pans out maybe in a way that nobody of a Norwich City persuasion hoped. This probably feels like the proper test and the proper marker that we're going to say, okay, that's where Norwich City are and that's what Norwich City can be. So yeah, it's probably, again, I'll echo what Chris Sutton said in his column midweek, probably the final box that they need to tick under David Wagner, this kind of evidence that they can do it against the best teams in the Championship. If they can do that, then I really do believe that it's game on for their playoff aspirations, but also their promotion credentials as well.
Yeah, I just want to tone in on a player that I spoke about at the start of the show, who made his debut last week, Marquinhos. Obviously, there was a lot of I suppose Kieran Dowell had done so well for under David Wagner. We'd really seen an output in terms of goals and assists, something we hadn't really seen under any other manager, particularly. We sort of saw flashes of it at different points, but not consistently. So that felt like a huge blow, but a really positive performance from Marquinhos. Obviously, a very young man who's just come into the team. He's still trying to get to grips with what David Wagner wants. So just want to get your take on that, Connor. What did you make of his performance against Cardiff and sort of what you hope to see from him now pushing on into sort of the last 12 games of the season?
Yeah, I thought, look, you can't argue with what he produced, the goal and assist. He was brought in to make an instant impact. That's how you make an instant impact, by producing productivity. And ultimately, that's how he's going to be judged, isn't it, as a player in one of those forward positions. And you mentioned it quite rightly about Kieran Dowell. I think actually the system that Norwich are playing at the moment is suited to those wide players being a bit more productive. We've seen an uplift in Onel Hernandez as well. He's got, I think, a couple of assists and a goal, which... I think he started 7, so 3 goal contributions in 7 games. That's roughly 1 in 2, just short of 1 in 2. Is a very decent return. Kieran Dowell as well was doing that. I think with Marquinhos, I didn't feel he was quite fully fit, and I wrote about this last week. But actually, for me, the best moment that he produced was that run to connect with that Onel Hernandez cross, because it showed anticipation, it showed an intelligence actually in the final third. And this is a player that was signed by Arsenal, Premier League leaders by all accounts, in the summer for £3 million from Sao Paulo. I think it's obviously a player that Norwich would have been aware of for a significant period of time from the work that they've done in Brazil. So I think when that opportunity presented themselves, they were well prepared and had the body of kind of the recruitment body of work that they needed to press the button on that. But for me, it's just that sharpness now. It's just, can they get him back up to full speed? Can they get him to a level where we begin to see a little bit more from him in terms of open play? I felt there was a few kind of aspects off the ball that concern is a strong word, but certainly you'd want to see improvement in. Callum O'Dowda really pushed him wide and forced some issues out of him in both halves, actually. And again, that's probably more of a fitness point than anything else. But the raw materials are there. I think anyone who's at Carrow Road could see that and could see that technically he's a very good footballer, wanted to connect and engage. The fact he's a bit more inverted, which is how we've seen Norwich function on that side with Dowell in that position. And then they've been slightly wider, although not too much on the other flank. So, yeah, look, what he did essentially was ensure that he has the shirt, barring any injuries that come over the next 24 hours or so for the next game. And that has to be how he kind of manages it now. I guess he's been waiting so long for an opportunity. I think it's kind of been like a coiled spring, hasn't he? Waiting to be kind of unleashed. Now he needs to continue that. And yes, output's very good, but it needs to be backed up with more in terms of his open play as well. And that for me is the aspect that I'd like to see come next. But a goal and assist in 60 minutes on his Norwich debut, I don't think you can argue with that at all. So yeah, a positive first step, but it is just that. And I think Arsenal and Norwich will all be striving for consistency and a bit more improvement and of course fitness, but understandable given I think that was his first start since November and he's just come back from a slight injury issue. So all of that thrown in, I think the debut was pretty positive actually. I don't know what you made of him, but I thought there was a lot to like, but obviously he's a 19-year-old kid, so there's going to be plenty to improve on as well, isn't there?
Yeah, I saw sort of a few moments in the game. I think David Wagner was sort of telling him to track his man, sort of a few times and maybe got lost. But I'm certainly going to have a different test against Millwall. They're probably going to be much more physical than what Cardiff were, albeit Cardiff are still a very physical side, especially away at the Den. So I think we'll really get a judge of his character on Saturday. A player, though, that's not made his debut for Norwich. Instead, he's making his 200th appearance for the Canaries on Saturday. A certain Teemu Pukki, 88 goals, 29 assists, 2 championship titles, 2 times Norwich City Player of the Season, EFL Championship Player of the Season 18-19, and I could go on, Connor, but we'll be here for probably till tomorrow, potentially even miss the game on Saturday with the amount of honours that man has in a Norwich City shirt. So just want to get your take on that. How big an achievement is that for Teemu Pukki to be making his 200th appearance? And I suppose, did you maybe expect him to be making 200 appearances in a Norwich City shirt when they signed him? And I suppose, the output that he's then given to the club.
Yeah, I mean, I made the point to David Wagner earlier on. It's not just the longevity of it; it's how important he's been for Norwich throughout that. He's been top scorer in every season that he's played. I'd be absolutely shocked if he wasn't top scorer come the end of this season as well. Now he's kind of shaken off that injury concern. So to play 200 games, to be as available and as consistent and as good as he has been for Norwich City is purely remarkable. I mean, he's made record breaking almost look seamless, hasn't he? And he's so calm and collected about it. He doesn't necessarily fit kind of the stereotypical striker in terms of they're all greedy, they're all selfish, they all think about themselves, they all want to score goals. Actually, I think he's kind of the opposite of that. He is a team player. He does think about the colleagues that he has around him. And in my view, in my 23 years of life, I'm not sure that I've seen a Norwich City have a better striker than Teemu Pukki. And there's some really good options in there. You could extend that further, but I can only talk about the ones that I've seen. So yeah, I mean, he is a Norwich City legend, and whenever you're watching one of those in action in real time, I think there's always a bit of it's quite surreal. I think because actually players only tend to get that tag once they've left, but you look at his achievements. I mean, his championship record is absolutely frightening. It's about 65 goals in 113, 14 games. I think there's even more assists onto that. So his overall goal contributions is at this level is just staggering. And of course, you have to mention that they signed him for, well, it's not absolutely nothing, but they signed him on a free transfer. So all of that combined, pound for pound, have Norwich City ever made a better signing than Teemu Pukki? No. And I think he's definitely the best striker that we've seen them have since the turn of the millennium. So, yeah, an unbelievable player. And look, if this is his last season, I don't think anyone could begrudge him, given his service, his contribution. I just really want to see him get to 100 goals, Adam. Now that's kind of my aim for the season. I'd like to see someone do it. I think he can do it. 12 games though, he's running out of games to do it, and he's 12 short. Add a playoff campaign on the end of it, and maybe we'll get there. And who knows? Is there a better kind of fantasy or situation or narrative than Norwich City getting to Wembley, Teemu Pukki scoring the winning goal, that being his 100th in a Norwich City shirt, and that ending in promotion? I don't know, but yeah, I mean, what is there left to say about Teemu Pukki? Every superlative that could be used has been used, and rightly so. And it's really interesting because obviously we had Max Aarons do it a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? It was Birmingham he did it. And they're two players who are at completely the opposite ends of their career, really. But in terms of what they've achieved and how they've achieved it, and their mentality, actually, in terms of being quite head down, getting on with the job, irrespective of the noise or even the form of the team at points, I think he deserves a huge amount of credit. And I know 3,000 Norwich City fans are going to absolutely serenade him to the hills, and no doubt we'll be hearing that song that we heard last weekend about all the years that they'd like him to stick around. I don't think that's going to happen slightly, but yeah, I think it's going to be a special day for him because ultimately, and he said it countless times as well, his best football of his career has come at Norwich City. So it's been a bit really like a match made in heaven, hasn't it?
Yeah, I was going to ask you to do a full rendition of the chant for anyone that didn't hear it, Connor, but I'd imagine that will be a no. So
there's windows there, and they have glass in, and I wouldn't want to shatter them. So it's probably for the best that I don't.
Well, hopefully we'll hear it in full flow if Pukki can, sort of bag a goal or potentially even a hat trick. That would be nice on Saturday. But just turning the attention now to the opposition. Millwall, obviously, notoriously a difficult trip to the Den. It's never an easy place to go, regardless of who you are and where you are in the league. That place, when it gets rocking, their fans are really behind the team. They're almost on top of you. It's very tough. I think Norwich have only lost one of the last 11 games between the two sides, which that probably lends itself to a long-come Norwich stat. But Millwall, unbeaten at home since September, so it's not going to be easy, Connor. And there's a record there for Norwich City to break. So I suppose, what have you made of Millwall under Gary Rowett? He's been there now quite a few years. They're currently fifth in the table and flying high, 4 points against Burnley and Sheffield United in recent weeks. That's a very good judgment of where they are. So yeah, obviously played during the week as well, conceded 2 goals, so that might potentially, I suppose, affect their mentality heading into this one. So yeah, what do you make of Millwall, and I suppose what impact will them playing during the week have had on this game?
Yeah, it's hard to say, isn't it? They haven't got the biggest squad, first and foremost, so I think that impact probably is going to be felt. I know they've got a couple of injury concerns as well, haven't they, and important players. And actually, the one thing that they probably don't have for all of those kind of attributes and characteristics that you mentioned there, they don't have a massive depth of squad. So if there are players missing, then I feel like the standard might drop quite significantly in those positions. That might not be the case. Those players could rise, but certainly in terms of, you look at their squad and it is a bit paper thin. But you mentioned it there. Actually, I think the job that Gary Rowett has done pound for pound is as good as any Championship manager, really, to get Millwall on their budget in and around the playoffs, and not only that, but to have improved them over the last few seasons as well is remarkable. And he did a similar-ish job at Birmingham and then was sacked with them in 7th, wasn't he, a few years ago? He did obviously struggled at Stoke, but that's nothing new. I think plenty of good managers have gone in and really struggled at Stoke, so I don't think that's a massive sort of mark on his record. So yeah, I really like him as a manager. I really like them as a side. They do the sort of dirty stuff really well, and by that I mean the hard yards, and they make life difficult, particularly at the Den. And I think I was just looking before we started recording, I think they've got limited tickets available as well. So that shows the magnitude of this game from their perspective. And for them, they'll be absolutely desperate to stay in the playoffs. But by the same token, I think it feels like a lot of the pressure is on Norwich heading into this weekend, because the narrative in the Championship, people will be looking at the top 6 and they'll be going, well, Millwall are going to fall away, Luton are going to fall away. So in that regard, it does feel like the onus will be on Norwich, and the expectation will be on Norwich. So that makes it very interesting, actually, when you think about what David Wagner has tried to do since he's come in and trying to almost cast them in this role of underdogs, because I don't really feel like they are that, certainly from an external perspective. Whether he can kind of galvanise that from an internal perspective remains to be seen. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned it there. 32 points they've taken at home this season. Only Reading, Blackburn, and obviously the top 2 have taken more, and only and that's only sort of, well, they've taken 32. Reading have taken 33, and Blackburn have taken 34. Sheffield United 36. So the points differentials aren't massive, but they haven't been beaten there since September. They have a really good knack of grinding stuff out, points, wins, draws, and actually they've got a lot of good draws at key points. You mentioned there the top 2 to get 4 points off Burnley and Sheffield United. Not many teams have done that this year, and not many teams will do that this year, if any. So that in itself, I think, goes to show how difficult a place this is to go. Norwich have a really good positive record there, whether you have, certainly in recent times at least. Obviously, a couple of really bad defeats. 2-4, was it 2 4-0s? Daniel Farker, I think Nigel Worthington had a 4-0 there as well, pretty famously. So yeah, look, it's a tough place, but we know how David Wagner works. The focus and the onus will be on his side and what they can control and what they can produce. And I think if they can raise their game and they can maintain the level that they've performed at in recent weeks, they can go there and get a result. And like I say, I think the way I view this game is just don't lose it. If they can take a point from this one and beat Sunderland, 4 points over those 2 games, I don't think anyone complains at that, really. It keeps them where they need to be. It would obviously keep them in touch with Millwall and those teams in the top 6, but also crucially, it would then kind of push Sunderland away from them. Obviously, the nature of the Championship is someone would replace them, and that gap would probably not disappear that much. But that would probably answer the questions that we spoke about right at the top of the show, in terms of, can they compete against these sides? Can they challenge against these sides? Can they beat these sides? So yeah, really interesting, poised fixture. I think it will be a seismic result if any side can win it, which probably lends you to think it will be a game that both sides maybe try not to lose. But we know the way that there we go. I said Daniel Wagner. That's the first one for the record. David Wagner approaches games. He goes to win. He goes to attack. And one thing Millwall are really strong at is defending, and also they're really good in transition and at counter-attacking teams and exploiting those opportunities. So yeah, it's going to be a massive game. I think no matter how much we talk it up, it kind of feels bigger than that, if that makes sense. So yeah, look, Millwall are an excellent side at this level. And if Norwich City have aspirations of breaking into the playoffs, they need to go there, put in a good performance, and get a result, whatever that looks like, be it 1 point or 3, in my view. And if they perform in the way that they have in recent weeks, albeit against sides who don't have the quality that Millwall have, I think they'll have enough to do that, I think.
Yeah, let's hope so. We'll be live for another sort of 10 or 15 minutes. So any comments, questions, score predictions, get them down in the comment section below, and we'll come around to those in just a moment. But of course, the Canaries are going to be backed by a very good following, 3,000 fans making the trip down to London. And you posed a question to Daniel. There we go, David Wagner this afternoon, and what his message would be to those fans. So just going to play that now, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, and just final one from me. I mean, you've obviously mentioned the 3,000 fans that are coming down on a few occasions. It's nice to have an away game that is not about 5 hours long in terms of on the road. But in terms of that support, and obviously we've spoken about the challenge of this game, that feels really significant for you guys to sort of go with that significant and that number of fans with you. I mean, what's kind of your message to them ahead of this weekend and the role that they can play?
I think they sent it already, the message, when I hear the numbers of 3,000. So they will not be there and be silent and have the hands in their pockets. So they will celebrate. They will show noise. I'm for 100% sure, and they will do everything like we will do to get a positive result. And this energy which they have shown, to be fair, in all the away games which we now together had, was great. Obviously Saturday it will be even greater, because 3,000, I think it's more than double what was the most away support which we had so far. And this is what we will see and what we will hear, and this gives you a boost. This is the truth. This is exactly how it is, and hopefully we can show this from the first second.
There we go, Connor. 3,000 fans making the trip. They've brought the noise in some of the recent away games. I thought Coventry, they were absolutely superb in terms of pulling the players over the line. Preston, the ones that made the long trip up there, they were also brilliant. So what role can they play on Saturday in such a big game, Connor? You know, Norwich fans always travel to London in good numbers, and, you know, sort of down the years, maybe not got particularly great results at certain places in London, but certainly the impact they can have on Saturday in such a big game could play a big part in the result.
Yeah, and the challenge for them really is to make it feel like an even split of supporters in the home end and in the away end. 3,000 is a magnificent number. Helped, as I mentioned in the question, by the fact that it's probably the first away game that's not about 6 hours long in terms of length, certainly in terms of one leg of it. So it's a massive role, because I think we've spoken about the Den and that atmosphere that they're able to cultivate there and how partisan they make it feel. If Norwich can go and make that a leveler, then it probably helps the players in terms of not being sucked into that atmosphere, not letting that kind of question affect them, I would say. And by and large throughout this season, obviously a little bit of a wobble with the Bristol City and Wigan games, Norwich have been pretty good on the road this year by all accounts. So that in part absolutely will be helped by their fans. So yeah, for sure. And I think David Wagner hit the nail on the head, really, that they've sent the message. 3,000 going is a real belief and a real kind of nod to what David Wagner and his group have been able to do since he was appointed in January, and how much belief they have in it. Because if you can go and give those 3,000 a real positive afternoon, then actually by the time we I'm going to use rock up again, I'm afraid, but by the time sorry, Alan, by the time we rock up to Carrow Road again for next weekend against Sunderland, that will have effects. And for me, almost the debate isn't really about the away support. I feel it's been about the home support this season and getting that to a consistent level. That's kind of fluctuated quite a bit for obviously various reasons, and it's nobody's fault. But yeah, it can be a great leveler for Norwich City. It's a great boost. You obviously want more fans than not, and you're right. The games that you mentioned, Preston, they were excellent. Coventry, they were excellent. Even Wigan, I thought they were pretty good in spite of, you know, an absolutely horrendous journey in terms of length, but also a pretty atrocious football match. So I think on the road this season they've delivered. Their team haven't always. If they can get the two in unison this weekend, then I think, as I said, throughout this, there's no reason why Norwich City can't go there and get a result. And I think there'll be a lot of people probably with the same feelings that we've discussed about having maybe hope, but not having belief at the moment. A win at Millwall and in front of 3,000 fans, that moment that they've been able to create at the end, no better way to build togetherness, but also no better way to turn hope into belief for me.
Yeah, you'll see a few questions flooding in. We'll come around to those in just a moment. But before we do that, Connor, just want to get your sort of take on the team. What David Wagner's going to field on Saturday? I mean, there's probably a few debate points, I suppose, the sort of striker area. Adam Ida's sort of come in for a lot of unfair criticism, I feel, at different points. And, Teemu Pukki's now had another week's training, probably going to be back available to start. So I suppose that's an area. Left back, we saw Jakob Sorensen come in for the first time since August against Cardiff. Thought he'd done relatively okay, but I think someone like Dimi Yanulis is probably going to be chomping at the bit to be back in the squad. I think he sort of struggled against Millwall away a couple of years back, so he's probably got even more of a point to prove there. So I suppose what sort of team do you expect to play, and maybe a formation wise is going to be the same?
Yeah, I think we've seen with David Wagner, actually the system is the system. It doesn't change, irrespective of who's fit, who's available, who isn't. He will make it work, and they've made it work with real success so far. So who are we to suggest that he changes that? So no, I would kind of expect this very fluid. You can call it a 4-4-2, a 4-2-3-1, a 4-2-2-2. I think I've called it all three on occasion. I think, look, if Tim Pukki has to start for me, I think the level of quality that he has in a game like this, I think he's going to be absolutely relishing it, particularly given the size and maybe, I don't want to say lack of mobility because that sounds really harsh, right? But certainly maybe the lack of acceleration that Millwall's defenders have over a short period of time. Although Charlie Cresswell's been superb this season on loan from Leeds, I feel like there'd be opportunities for him to exploit. I'd actually play him and Ida together. So that would probably mean dropping Nunez out. I think given the size of the game, actually having that variation up front and being able to clip it into Ida if need be would be really helpful. And then the movement of Pukki sort of on the shoulder of the Millwall defence, I think could cause absolute havoc if they got it right. So, and it's a partnership that kind of showed signs of kind of sparking into life in the Premier League last season. We haven't seen it as much this year. We haven't seen it, I don't think at all in this system, certainly not from the start since Wagner's appointment. So that would be really good to see. In terms of the left back, I think I'll bring Yanulis back in. I think Sorensen was fine. I wouldn't maybe stretch the analysis to much more than fine. He was a steady Eddie, as he is whenever he plays, and he's reliable. But actually, I think Norwich will need that balance on the left side, that natural balance, that kind of progression that Yanulis brings you, particularly away from home, because I think Millwall will be quite aggressive with how they press at points. I think they'll probably balance it quite well. And I also think the width that he gives you on that side is a lot better than what Jakob Sorensen gives. So, yeah, those are probably all I would change. Yes, they're all I would change. I think the rest of the side kind of picks itself, given recent form. You stick with McLean and Sarah. You leave Marquinhos and Hernandez, who's, I feel, really gone under the radar on El Hernandez in terms of how he's improved. Ben Gibson's had a couple of really good games as well since he's come in. Max Aarons looks a lot more comfortable now. So I think, and obviously for me, it's Angus Gunn in goal. I think he is Norwich City's best goalkeeper at this moment in time. So yeah, I think you're right. It's only really the striking position and probably that left back slot that we're talking about. So yeah, I'd go with Yanulis and I'd go with Ida and Pukki up front. What about you? Any changes beyond that? Do you disagree with my selections? What would you kind of go with?
No, I think I'm with you. I feel like if Jolis was a little bit further down the track, maybe there'd be more of an argument that could be a place for rotation. We sort of saw him really come on and have an impact in some of the recent games. I thought he was very good against Hull when he came on. Sort of definitely changed the sort of the format of that game in latter stages, but certainly someone who fitness-wise still needs to work on things. But yeah, you can't change the midfield at the moment. I mean, on Bamadeli, probably a little bit harsh that he's been dropped, but I thought Gibson's been really, he's been excellent in the last couple of games, and he's a player who's come under fire from fans at different points, and he's certainly sort of proving the doubters wrong, and he maybe looks like the sort of player that they paid the money for, certainly in the Championship anyway. Just before we go around to the score prediction question, just going to drop into the comments. There's a Orlando commenting, will Hutchinson start? I think that's obviously Sean Hutchinson, the Millwall centre-half there. I'm actually going to be doing a terrace talk very shortly with a Millwall fan, so I'll be sure to ask him, and if you check our channel tomorrow morning, then that video will be up, and you can go and head over and watch that. Matt Gregory, a very good person, he loves the Pink and Channel. Question for you both: where'd your head say Norwich will finish? I mean, for me, it probably depicts on the next two games and what Norwich grab in terms of points. I think that can be sort of the benchmark of where they are against sort of fellow playoff contenders. We obviously brought the graphic up at the start. Norwich has still got some very tough trips in there. West Brom away, Middlesbrough away, Blackburn away, Sheffield United at home. So there's some really, really tough fixtures. And I think the next two, if they can come out of these two unscathed, 4 points, 4 points, then that probably sets them up to push in the last 10 games. My instinct is they'll finish 6th. I just think they'll sneak in towards the end. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that one, Connor?
Yeah, see, I've been pretty consistent throughout this season, and I've said I think they'll fall just short, and that's kind of been my view. And I think I've said that on a lot of verdicts and a lot of podcasts as well. I think I've kind of said anywhere from about 7th to about 12th. I think I said I'll probably shorten that to about 10th now, given recent form. But yeah, I mean, I'm still very much the same. I've said this a few times on the verdict. I haven't really watched them yet and thought, yeah, I can see it now. I can see a team that can break into the playoffs. So, excuse me. I think actually you're right. For me, and again, I've said it earlier on this show. If they can come through these two tests, I think then for me, I might raise my sights a bit higher. But certainly at the moment, I haven't seen enough to suggest that they're able to finish in that top 6 at this moment in time. As good as the form has been, I probably expected it when I kind of looked at the fixture list after that Burnley game and the opponents. I think you could probably argue that the fact they didn't get more points out of Wigan and Bristol City is a little bit of a shame, because that would have pushed them into the top 6 and probably frames this argument a little differently. Sorry. So yeah, for me, I'm with you. I think if they get in, they'll sneak in, and it will be a 5th or 6th job. I can't see them finishing much higher than that. But at the moment, I do feel they'll fall just short. And I think actually we'll get a clearer answer. I really want to be proved wrong, by the way. I think we'll get a clearer answer and a clearer picture once we get past the next 2 games. And if they can beat Millwall, then look, I said about hope and belief. I think I'll certainly be jumping on any kind of bandwagon that is backing them for the playoffs after that. But until we reach that point, until I've seen them play a competitor, a team that's in and around them, and they're capable of beating them, yeah, I think it's going to be tough for my opinion to change. And obviously it might flip radically in the next 2 games. And actually, when people come to the verdict after the Sunderland game, they might see me go, "Yep, do you know what? I've seen enough in the last 2 games." But also, since David Wagner took charge, and it would be 10 games after that Sunderland game, won't it? In terms of league games, you could actually then, I think, probably make a case that they can get in the top 6. So that's where I am right now. If that clears it up, so I don't think they'll get there as things stand. For a minimum of 4 points out of the next 2 games, and I'll probably become a believer.
Yeah, it certainly feels like the 2 points per game statistic around David Wagner at the moment is slightly skewed by the fact they've really only played sort of bottom half sides aside from Burnley. On that, just want to get into the score prediction. Nikki on YouTube saying 1-1. Connor, are you feeling more positive? Are you backing a Norwich City win, or are you fearing the worst?
In the middle. I'm completely on the fence for this one. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. I think it's going to be probably a bit more open than we all expect. I think there'll be goals. I think there'll be chaos. I think it'll be tough at points. I could see even Norwich going 2-0 up or going 2-0 down and coming back or lose it. So I can see kind of all the permutations, but I think the gravitas that we've attached to this game in terms of it being a must not lose, in terms of those conditions being in and around it and how difficult I think it will be for any side to lose this game. I feel we will end with a draw. So yeah, I'm going to go 2-2. Not that anyone should listen to me, because my predictions this season have been utterly horrendous. So
no, I'm with you. I feel a draw is not a bad shout, and I think if Norwich can then go back that up, as we've already spoken about, with a result against Sunderland at home the week after, then 4 points from those 2 games would be a really, really positive, sort of outlook then looking into the last 10 games, particularly sort of after that, when they've got sort of Huddersfield, Stoke, more sides that are struggling towards the bottom, where you feel like they probably can generate the points they'd need to maybe try and detach themselves from a few sides sort of in that block, chasing towards the top 6. Yeah, I feel 1-1. Timo Pukki on the score sheet. It's all written in the stars. 200th game, his 89th Norwich City goal. That would be a lovely way to mark the occasion. And I think most Norwich fans travelling back from the Den on Saturday would be very happy if you offered them a point at the moment, particularly given that obviously Millwall are unbeaten at home since September. So it's going to take a mammoth effort from any side to go there and turn that round and get the win. So with that, we're going to leave you on this Thursday evening. If you're making the trip to Millwall, as David Wagner said, bring the noise, celebrate and be positive, I suppose, and that energy will hopefully be fed to the players. Of course, lots of great content across our channels. David Wagner's press conference is up, so you can hear what Connor posed to him, and all his answers are there. That's literally just gone live, so the full presser is up. I'll be speaking to a Millwall fan very shortly, so that'll be tomorrow. You can get all the insight on the Lions and what we can expect from the opposition. Obviously, lots of great content across the Pink and Plus app as well. Free trial, $1.99 a month thereafter. Lots of great columnists. Ewan Roberts, obviously a legend, a regular columnist. Chris Sutton, obviously another legend, also a regular columnist, and lots of great written audio and video content on there. And as I say, it's a snippet of a price, $1.99 a month. So why not come and join the nice gang we've got building across there, and be part of a hopefully a positive Norwich City community heading into the last 12 games of the season. So we're going to leave you there. Enjoy your weekend if you're making the trip. As I say, safe trip down. It's obviously a nice short journey in context for us. Feels like we've only been doing sort of trips to the northwest. Yeah, it's So I'm sure all the violins are out, but we're looking forward to this one. Should be a really good game. And of course, join us at the Den, 2:00 for team news on Saturday. All the match coverage will be across the Pink and the Pink and Plus app. So with that, we're going to sign off. I'm going to go get dinner, and let's hope Norwich City can provide the goods on Saturday at the Den.